This is My Child Will Thrive, and I'm your host, Tara Hunkin, nutritional therapy practitioner, certified GAPS practitioner, restorative wellness practitioner, and mother. I'm thrilled to share with you the latest information, tips, resources, and tools to help you on the path to recovery for your child with ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, or learning disabilities. My own experiences with my daughter, combined with as much training as I can get my hands on, research I can dig into, and conferences I can attend, have helped me to develop systems and tools for parents like you who feel overwhelmed trying to help their children. So sit back as I share another great topic to help you on your journey. A quick disclaimer before we get started. My Child Will Thrive is not a substitute for working with a qualified healthcare practitioner. The information provided on this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat your child. Please consult your healthcare practitioner before implementing any information or treatments that you have learned about on this podcast. There are many gifted, passionate, and knowledgeable practitioners with hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of study and clinical experience available to help guide you. Part of our goal is to give you the knowledge and tools you need to effectively advocate for your child so that you don't blindly implement each new treatment that comes along. No one knows your child better than you. No one knows your child's history like you do or can better judge what is normal or abnormal for your child. The greatest success in recovery comes from the parent being informed and asking the right questions and making the best decisions for their child in coordination with a team of qualified practitioners in different areas of specialty. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Autism, ADHD, and Sensory Processing Disorder Summit. In order to learn more about the summit and to sign up for free, please go to www.mychildwillthrive.com/summit. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you back to the My Child Will Thrive podcast. I'm very excited to have with me today Dr. Shawn Tassone. He's both an MD and a PhD, and he's going to talk to us about the real truth about hormones. Before I dive into that, I want to just give you a little bit more background on his amazing credentials and experience in this field. So Dr. Tassone is known as America's holistic gynecologist and is the first physician in the United States to be double board certified in obstetrics and gynecology and by the American Board of Integrative Medicine. He holds a medical degree in addition to a PhD in mind-body medicine. He's a practicing OBGYN in Austin, Texas, hormone specialist, author, speaker, highly rated patient advocate, which is extremely important to those of us that have needed that in the past, and the creator of the world's first integrative hormonal mapping system. In his 20 plus years of practice, Dr. Tassone has seen over 40,000 women, and he's determined to remove the myths surrounding women's health. As an integrative health practitioner, he believes that you should have an active role in your care. His work includes studies and publications on hormonal imbalances, spirituality and medical care, whole foods to heal the human body, and integrative medicine. Dr. Tassone is featured in many publications, including the New York Times, NBC News Online, Stanford MedX, and his book, which we're going to talk about today, The Hormone Balance Bible, that's been published by HarperCollins, and it's actually available now. It just came out. So I want to welcome Dr. Tassone to the podcast, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, today's actually publication day.
That's right. I forgot. Well, we're recording this on July the 6th, 2021. And this is a big day for authors. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I want to talk to you about, so as we've talked about, you know, that a lot of the listeners here are moms, and there are some dads too, and practitioners that work. They have children that have neurodevelopmental issues. Typically, those of us that come do this type of work, like I do, come here because we have a history with it. So tell me how you got into working in women's hormones, especially when we have a male doctor speaking us today about specializing in women's hormones.
Well, I think when you go through your obstetrical training, OBGYN, in your third year of medical school, you kind of start making decisions on what you want to do. And I think on a superficial level, I chose OBGYN because it generally is a happy profession for the most part. You know, you're delivering babies and there isn't much in the way of a lot of bad disease or death or cancer. There's some, obviously, but it's not overriding. And so, and then I liked the other doctors. Like it just had a personality about it. The physicians generally were more approachable and nicer. And I think that's same for like family practice and pediatrics too. So it just kind of fit my personality. As I got into it a little bit more, when I was a second year resident, like 200 years ago, it seems, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And so I knew a lot about the disease process. I knew about the treatment plans and all that stuff. What I was not expecting, and I'm an only child, so I was kind of it. And not only was I functioning kind of as physician, but I was functioning as a child and trying to advocate for my mom. But what I didn't expect was that she was going to have a lot of problems with in between like chemo treatments, calling with joint pain and hair loss and just not sleeping well. And then she was she was 51, I believe, at the time. They wouldn't prescribe hormones, so having all of the side effects of menopause on top of all this stuff. And so I felt really pretty much completely hopeless and helpless. Couldn't even help my own mom, which was kind of humbling in the sense that I was like, well, if I can't even help my own mother, how am I going to help patients that are going through this? Fast forward 5 years, she passed away at 56. And when she passed away, I just thought to myself, I just felt so limited. I had to figure out a way to educate myself more on just quality of life and stuff, not just giving a pill or whatever, but helping people. And so I was reading, whenever you're having a spiritual crisis, you seem to go to Sedona. So that's where I was. And I was reading a book at the time. It was probably 2005. I was reading a book by Andrew Weil called 8 Weeks to Optimum Health. And this, 15 years ago, he was talking about fish oil and CoQ10 and all this stuff that I just was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. And so actually, I was living in Tucson at the time, and his fellowship was in Tucson. So I was just like, this is serendipitous. So I signed up for it and did the 2 year fellowship. And what was interesting was in that 2 year fellowship, there was a 8 week course on spirituality and health that really just kind of opened my head up a lot. And so when I was done with that training, I was like, I feel like I've got to do something more. And that's when I did the PhD in philosophy. That was more of a personal spiritual journey for me. 6 years later, and I really focused on mind body medicine, like healing. Worked with shamans in different countries and just learned about different ways to do healing. And so the book is kind of a combination. And what I like to stress to people is that this is not me telling women what to do. This is the 40,000 women that I've sat down with over the years and me listening to their stories and those stories coming out through the book.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the work that you're doing and what you've done with the book is because one of the things that I think will resonate with everybody here is just not feeling listened to, whether it's with their children or with their own health leading up to having their children and then after their children as well. We are often told that, well, everything, it'll run the gamut, and you will have heard a lot of it from people, I'm sure, telling you that before when they've talked to other practitioners, but with their children, like, for example, that have autism and they have terrible diarrhea, they call it autistic diarrhea when it's clearly not. The diarrhea it wasn't caused by the autism. It's the other way around. But so we're all used to not having people listen to us, so it's really nice to see that that's how you have shaped your practice and your book that you've just launched, and how you do your work with people. Why don't we dive more into hormones themselves, and what a holistic approach to women's health and hormones looks like in your practice?
So when I was writing the book, what I did was for 15 years I've been listening to women talk to me about, like you said, not being heard and what the stories were of how they were feeling, what I found was there were some pretty common threads amongst the stories. And I came up with 12 different storylines. And what I found was that I was talking to patients about their hormone imbalances, like, say, estrogen dominance. They would kind of glass over a little bit. And I thought, I got to figure out a way to talk about this in a way that's not so medical. And so I really like archetypes. I like narrative medicine. And so I attached an archetypal story to each of these imbalances. So, like, estrogen dominance is called the queen. And when I talk about estrogen dominance in the book, I talk about the story of the queen. And most women will be like, oh my God, that is totally me. And it's just because I've heard so many thousands of stories. So then, as I came up with that idea, I was like, well, now I've got to figure out a way for women to be able to help themselves and not necessarily need to go to the doctor to fix it. Because when they go to the doctor, they're told they're normal, or they're just getting older, or, sleep more, or whatever. I can't sleep. Well, sleep more. Well, that's what are you talking about? So I came up with a 6-step protocol for each of the 12 imbalances, and I call it shines. And of the 6 steps, only one of them do you actually need a physician, and that's the H part. So S is a spiritual practice. And that means a lot of different things. So for a queen, what is it about a queen that helps her spiritually, helps her flourish? Well, queens need good advisors. So a woman that has estrogen dominance, she tends to be more irritable. She's not sleeping well. She's not the person that she wants to be. So what makes a good queen? You don't want to be an off with your head type queen, which is what estrogen dominance can feel like. So surround yourself with advisors. Find women that you can surround yourself with, friends, family, whatever, and really rely on them to help you do things, especially with moms like you have that are super busy with family life and taking care of children. Getting a support group, a good set of advisors, and really tapping into that maternal archetype in your family. H is hormones, so that's pretty self-explanatory. The I is what I call infoceuticals, and infoceuticals kind of run the gamut of energy medicine. I wanted to throw something in for the women that like to try or believe in vibrational energetic healing. So things like acupuncture, Reiki, healing touch, essential oils. So that's one of the steps. And then the N is nutrition. The E is exercise, and the final S is proper supplementation. And I'm very simplistic when it comes to supplements. I like to use as few as possible to save money, and I like to target them to specific issues. So I don't like to use a lot of proprietary formulas. If I need to help someone sleep, I'm going to use like magnesium, not a sleep formula that's got 10 different things in it. So usually it's you, and you can pick. You don't have to do all 6 of those steps. You might find one that helps more than another one. But usually what will happen is most women will have help with hormones themselves, but then I'll also add in some of the other aspects of that healing process. And it's a journey, just like, healing usually is.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that framework. I know you have a quiz on your website too that people can sort of go through and find out what the different symptoms of that along within in the book itself.
Yeah, so the quiz is at my website, tassonemd.com /quiz. Or if you get the book, I'm trying to find it here. There's actually a QR code in the beginning of the book that I threw in there because I wanted to make it easy for women to get the quiz.
Get to the quiz.
There is a QR code in the book. It's in one of the first pages, and you just scan it on your phone and it'll take you to the quiz, and it's totally free. Now, obviously a quiz is not the same as getting blood drawn, but for women that are up at midnight and are just searching the internet and want to know what's going on, it's a good starting point. I've had 30,000 women take the quiz so far, and the feedback is wonderful. It's not your typical 5-question quiz. It's like 36 questions. It's pretty detail oriented. And then on the back end, I have a really big algorithm that calculates the numbers. So it's pretty accurate if you answer the questions honestly.
Yeah, no, it's great in a depth, but even though there's lots of questions, it's very simple to take and use. So I highly recommend people go, and we'll put the link to that as well in the show notes, as well as a link to the book. What do you find in your practice in all these years and all the women that you've seen? What is the most common hormonal imbalance you see, and what symptoms does that typically include?
I used to think that it was going to be estrogen dominance. I thought I saw it a lot and that it was going to be number one. But after looking at the quiz, far and away in all the age groups, it's low testosterone, what I call the nun archetype. And it's not even close. The estrogen dominant queen is second, but far and away testosterone deficiency. And I think it's because we tend to be in this country a little more overweight as we age, and that will lower testosterone levels. Birth control pills for younger women lower testosterone levels, and obviously birth control pills are used a lot. And I just think that we are running ourselves kind of on that hamster wheel, and that's going to lower testosterone if you're just kind of a workaholic kind of a person. And so, yeah, far and away. And the other thing that a double whammy with testosterone is that it's kind of ignored by the medical community. It's almost thought that women don't need testosterone. I mean, there's, pellets and stuff now that I'm not a big fan of, but those almost go in the other direction and make your testosterone too high. So, but yeah, testosterone and what that feels like, it's pretty simple. I say if it was a t-shirt, testosterone deficiency would just say meh. It's just kind of like, I'm okay, but I just don't care. That drive, that desire, that thing that motivates you is just kind of gone. And then it's also like fatigue, especially like at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. You just want to take a nap. That's testosterone deficiency. And then, decreased libido. But the decreased libido comes from taking care of kids all day, and then you're just exhausted, and then your spouse comes home or whatever, your significant other, and they're ready to relax and have sex and do stuff, and you're just like, nope, I'm good, I want to go to bed. So but that's far and away what I see.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I think that a lot of people. So what I mean, you talk about what women tend to also be fearful of testosterone in terms of thinking that they're raising their testosterone levels, they're going to become bulky, like you take on male features. What I mean, obviously you're saying that we'll get rid of the meh feeling. What are the other things in terms of how does it impact their health in other ways?
Well, obviously, muscle mass. If you work out, you can gain some muscle. The beautiful thing about muscle mass is that for every pound of muscle, you burn an extra 50 calories just sitting on the couch. So, and usually it's not about. There's a normal range for women and testosterone. My goal, and I always look at hormones when I talk to patients. You're either in the house or you're not in the house, so it's normal or abnormal. But then where are you in the house? So a lot of women, like the lady I just talked to before the interview, normal testosterone, but she's laying on the floor in the basement. So she couldn't go any lower, but you could look at it and go, well, it's normal. You should be fine. But maybe life would feel better if you were kind of up on the main floor. And so what I'm doing is you're not going to be outside of the normal range for a female, just kind of higher up in the range. And so that's what I try to do. I think some of these programs, like with like hormone pellets and things, I've got women whose testosterone is 6 times normal. That's where you start having some of the hair growth and stuff like that, and that's not good. But when I do things, it's always just to stay in that normal range, but to make you higher in the normal range.
Yeah, it is really important. So what do you recommend someone, what testing do they do if they think they're experiencing hormonal imbalance? Because obviously there's the testing that you see, which is not a lot, typically at a typical well visit at your MD. So what types of testing do you typically recommend?
So one of the sections in my book is on specific testing. So there's the three ways you can test are saliva, blood, and urine. Saliva, I'm not a huge fan of because it's just not really reliable or reproducible in its results, but it is good for cortisol. So it's a good way to check cortisol levels. Urine, I'll do blood. Blood, I actually probably 80% of the testing I do is blood based because I take insurance. So blood is usually covered by insurance. The other thing about blood is it's extremely accurate because it's what's in your bloodstream at the time the needle's in your arm. But that's also a limitation because it's only telling me what you're doing while the needle's in your arm. So it's more of a snapshot of you than a story. However, if we gather data over time, I'll get a better picture of that. When I order blood, I will usually order estradiol, progesterone, free and total testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin, free T3, which is thyroid, free T4, TSH, a DHEA, and a vitamin D. And sometimes I'll add some other things like thyroid antibodies if I'm worried about Hashimoto's and things like that. But that's the core set. The limitation with blood is, again, it's just that it's only accurate while the needle's in your arm. So the doctor needs to know where you are in your cycle, when you took your medications, if you're menopausal. And just knowing that, you can definitely dial things in. Urine is a great test. It's a 24-hour test, so it's a bigger picture of you, checks all the sex hormones, also checks breakdown products. So like, how do you get rid of your estrogen levels? How do you process your testosterone? Checks melatonin, checks cortisol, vitamin B6, B12, dopamine, neurotransmitters, things like that. So it tests a lot of things. It's limited by the fact that it doesn't check thyroid or vitamin D. And it's about $350, so it's not covered by insurance. And it takes about 3 weeks to get the results back. So those are the limitations. So they're all good. There's no necessarily right or wrong way. I usually go blood or urine. I have some patients that do both. Like they'll do blood and then they'll do the urine the same day, and we'll back up the blood test with the urine results that I get a few weeks later.
Yeah. And then it goes back to, once you get those results, you're looking for making sure people on that optimal in the house, where they are in the house zone, I assume.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what, when it comes to, so if we get the right testing and have someone that's great, I mean, in the end, the testing are only as valuable as the person that then can help you interpret them. So we highly recommend you're reaching out to the right person to do that. What types of lifestyle changes can people make like today without even necessarily having any testing that can help them with those different archetypes?
Dietary wise, it depends on what the imbalance is. I do think that if I was to pick kind of a good way to eat overall, I'm a fan of, and it's funny because nutrition is highly debatable. If you go on Instagram for more than 20 minutes, you'll see that. I do like intermittent fasting. I think that a 16-8 fast or a 12-12 fast, as many days a week as you can, it rests the gut, which we know is important for hormones and just general health. It also reduces calories. So for those of us that maybe eat too much, it will help with that. And then when you do eat, I'm more of a whole food kind of person. So meats and fruits and vegetables. Get your carbs from fruits and vegetables, and try to stay away from the processed foods, which we all talk about that, but it is important. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else of having a processed food. I'm having my dark cashew, chocolate covered cashews right now, but I'm not always snacking that well. So those would be two big things. And then really focusing, not being afraid of good fats, avocados and eggs and things like that. And if you're a meat eater, just eating lean, grass-fed, meats, free range kind of stuff. If you can afford organic for your fruits and vegetables, that's great too. But those are kind of, if I had to just say what overall works pretty well, I think those two things. I have a lot of women that will do intermittent fasting in a lower carb. I'm not talking totally keto, but lower carb
Mhm.
food, and on average lose probably 6 pounds a month if that's one of their goals.
Yeah. And so, and I obviously I also like agree. It's nice to have a simple set of rules as opposed to a complex diet. I mean, a lot of times parents are choosing to do therapeutic diets with their children, and it is difficult, and they can be very, very helpful for a period of time. But it is also nice to have an overlying set of principles that can be good for both the parents and the kids at the same time. And it certainly makes meal planning a lot easier. What else do you typically recommend in terms of lifestyle beyond nutrition around things like exercise and sleep?
So exercise is also one of those things that is going to vary. So like somebody who's there's an archetype in the book called the saboteur, and those are women that have really low normal cortisol levels that are fatigued. And those women are, I call them saboteurs because they sabotage their own health because they're too busy taking care of everybody else, which is probably a lot of the people that listen to your podcast. They're so busy doing other things for other people, they never think that they're the last ones to get the benefits of anything once everybody else is okay. And usually everybody else isn't okay. So they're always taking care of other people. So that person that's a saboteur, I have a good example in my book, a lady who's a pharmaceutical rep. She's driving hundreds of miles a day in the car. She's eating horrible lunches because she's buying lunches for the doctors. She's got 3 boys under the age of 7. So she gets home at 5, whips up food, takes care of everybody, baths and everything. And then, husband comes home and she's exhausted. Well, she had this kind of saboteur archetype, but my recommendation for her was actually to not work out. Like she needed to learn how to say no and take care of herself. And if she worked out, maybe do walking or yoga, something that was just not strenuous, like not high intensity interval training. Now, somebody who is maybe a queen archetype with a lot of estrogen, maybe a little extra weight, that would be a great setup for high intensity interval training, like a program like F45 or Orange Theory or something like that. But a saboteur, she would make herself worse. So that's why the book has got different diet and exercise plans for the different archetypes.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good to hear you say that and also listen to the stories. Although I love the irony of the pharmaceutical rep buying bad meals for doctors.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, we literally, because it's fast, right? So
Of
you know,
course.
they'll buy sandwiches, which you think are good, but it's like chicken salad, there's mayonnaise everywhere, and or pizza, or so we have to specifically. I have a salad place here around the corner, and sometimes you want something bad, so we'll take the bad food every once in a while. But yeah, you've got to specifically tell them because they have their favorite restaurants that they go to and or that deliver now, and so it's just yeah, it's hard to eat right for her because and it's all about meal prep, like you said. For her, that could be a spiritual practice. You could meal prep on Sundays and make it just a part of your day where it's almost like church. That's what you do on Sunday afternoons is prep for the week. And that way you can make sure you have nutritious food and snacks and things like that on the road.
Yeah, no, it is incredibly difficult to do, but that's why I love the archetype system and realizing that there's no one specific way of going about things for all of us. We have to figure out where we fit in. Before we wrap up here, just what's the best advice that you like to give, at least I know you like to give personalized individual care to everybody, but if you could give one piece of advice to the women that are listening today in terms of what they can do now, aside from picking up your book, which we absolutely recommend they do, to improve their hormonal health and their health overall, what's the top line recommendation that you usually make?
Well, one is the mantra of normal isn't always normal. So nobody knows you like you know you. So if you go to the doctor and they tell you that your hormones are normal, but you don't feel normal, then something's not normal. I mean, that's just the way it is. And that's where I talk about the house analogy. It's like, yeah, your thyroid is normal, but you're laying on the floor in the basement. So you have to advocate for yourself. You have to find a physician or somebody that will, that you have a rapport with. And I don't think you need to spend thousands of dollars to do that either. I know a lot of women do, but you don't need to do that. Second, two fun things. Well, debatable if they're fun or not, but two things that you can do that will help your hormones, your cortisol, restart your day, set your day. One is when you're taking your shower in the morning, at the very end, turn it as cold as all the way cold and stand there as long as you can. If you can do a minute, that's great. That resets your cortisol. It wakes you up. It starts your day. It's a good practice. Like people that do those cold pools, but you don't need a pool. You can just do it in the shower. Second is every day you can eat 1 or 2 squares of chocolate. Unfortunately, it can't be milk chocolate. It's got to be 70% or higher of cacao. I just did a reel on Instagram where I sampled all the way from milk chocolate to 95% cacao. And Lord, I'll tell you, you start getting up above 70, 85, 90, it's pretty rough eating. 70 is okay. 70 is pretty tolerable, but it's not like, eating milk chocolate. But the cacao is really good. It's a great antioxidant. It's good for your vascular system, and it's a good fat.
I absolutely love the recommendation of listening to yourself and saying if it's not normal for you, it's not normal. You know you better than anyone else. We say that all the time here about parents knowing their kids. And there's no one that's spending obviously more time with yourself, but also with your children. So that's why we always say they're the best judge of what's going on with their children, and not giving up when they really feel that there's something that's not quite right, or that there's more that can be done. So thank you so much for that advice. Thank you for writing the book. Know how much work goes into these things. So I highly recommend everybody picks up a copy, and we've got we'll have links in the show notes to that, as well as to Dr. Tassone's website, and any other things that we can think of that can help you out on your journey with your hormones today. Thanks again, Dr. Tassone, for joining us. And if you enjoyed this interview and you want to hear more from us, please be sure to subscribe to the My Child Will Thrive podcast. And if you can take the time to give us a review, we'd really appreciate that. Thanks again. And I look forward to doing this again soon. So that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me this week on My Child Will Thrive. I'm so passionate about giving you the tools and information you need to help your child recover. And as they say, it takes a village, so join us in the My Child Will Thrive Village Facebook group, where you can meet like-minded parents and stay up to date on everything we have going on at My Child Will Thrive. This is Tara Hunkin, and I'll catch you on the next podcast or over at mychildwillthrive.com.